Oh, yeah, I'm going to show some basic peyote stitch improvisational patterning. So I'll start beading here. I'm going to get my close-up camera so you can see what I'm doing. Hit the share button and you can see the beads that I have. Notice that they're mixed together. I like to mix them. You know why? Because that way I know better how they're going to look like together. You don't always know that too well just from having them side by side, even separated out like that. If I had two little piles like that and they're close to each other, they would look more different from this pile to this pile with no beads in between than they would if I had them mixed together. So as a general practice, try that. Don't be afraid to let your beads mix together. And I don't know if I covered this last time. I will show you the best way to thread your needle, which is, I think I did that actually on camera, but I'll do it again just because. Why? Because I can, because nobody's stopping me. So I put a little bit of extra beeswax on the thread. I use silicone thread, which is already pre-waxed. It's a twisted ply thread. It's really strong. It's a professional tailoring thread. And I just make sure that I can see the eye of through the eye of the needle. I guide that sucker in. See how little length I have on that end of that thread there? Very little. Otherwise it bends when you try to put it through. I just get a little bit through the needle and then I pull. I pull all the way down because I'm using doubled thread. If I pull the tail of the thread to make the tail of the thread as long as the other end of the thread, then I've got doubled thread. My needle is right in the center of the thread. So I will start. Oh, and I need a stop bead, don't I? If you saw the last video, I used a stop bead. So here's my stop bead. Stop bead that's a color that's easy to tell from the others. Now, to get this type of stop bead, the slip knot stop bead, I do an overhand knot around the bead, not through the bead, around the bead. Then I go as if I'm going to do an overhand knot, but then I pull a loop through and boom, I've got a slip knot. So what I'll start off with is a bunch of stripes. When you're starting peyote stitch and you're teaching peyote stitch for the first time, it's easy to track where you are when you make stripes like this. Now you can make this as wide as you want, but I think I'll make it a little bit wider. And what you want to do with stripes is just when you're stringing the initial thing, the initial string of beads, make it so that the last two beads, let's see, yeah, 5, 10, 13. Make the last two beads the same color as each other. And I'll show you why in a minute, or very soon. The reason for that is that these two beads are going to stack on top of each other. The way you make that happen, same as last time, is you skip those two beads and then you pass through the bead that was next to it, that you strung right before those two beads, going in the direction of the slip knot bead. And what that does is anchors it in place. What it wants to do is this. What I make it do is this. You make them stack on top. They want to do funky things. You make them do what you want to do. So again, just as in the last video I made, I'm going back through, skip string one. This is the one I see. These are the two on the end. This is the one I came out of. I strung one, I strung that one, I skipped that one, I went through that one. I'm going to do this string, skip, and string and pass through all the way to the end of the row. And if I counted wrong, just as last time, I would just discard the bead that doesn't want to stay on there because I counted wrong. If I counted right, then I will just take the slip knot bead off. In fact, what I'll do, I'm going to make it a little easier on myself this time. When I get back to that slip knot bead, I'm not going to go through the slip knot bead. I'm simply going to go pass through the bead next to it. See, one more stitch to go, and that is bending. That's okay. It'll stop bending very soon on the next row. So yeah, final stitch, pinch that stop bead away so you don't go through the thread that's connecting it, and pass it all the way through. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just get rid of this stop bead now, and I have to keep it good and held together good and tight because the whole thing could slip off. But what I'll do, let me get that sucker off of there. There we go. What I'll do is see how the two threads are coming out. I'm going to get that good and tight as I possibly can. Then I'm going to make a knot, a permanent knot. Over one way, over the other direction, and boom, my work is secure. Yay. And as soon as I can, I'll get rid of that tail. If I wanted to be laborious about it, I would put a needle on this end of this thread and work that needle back through the finished work. If I want to be a little more expeditious, I would clip it and then very judiciously, very carefully burn the very tail end of the thread. I'm not going to do that right now, but I will in the future. So check this out. Now that we have established, see how whatever I was about to skip, I strung that same color. That makes the stripe. So on this row, it's going to be all green. I'm coming out of the purple, I'm skipping the green, so I string a green and then I pass through the purple. If I keep doing that, the stripe stays the same. As the stripe doesn't jog into a funky up art trip. I mean, I could make it do that, but I don't want to mess with you yet. Messing with you is for later in the program. So see how it's straightening out too? The funny thing is, see, I just want to show you when you first couple rows, it really technically doesn't matter which side I go through, but after this row, it does. Just so you know. And this is what your needle often wants to do, which is go through 2 up beads when you only want to go through 1. So something to be aware of. Happens to the best of us, even if you've been doing it for a while. Now, check this out. Yeah. So yeah, see how straightened out that is? I'm going to do a few more rows and then I will switch it up because you can switch it up, because when you switch it up, it makes patterns. We were already making a pattern, but makes the patterns change. And again, I want to reiterate that number 1, I normally, this is what is it? A pillowcase. I normally work on a plate, a ceramic or glass plate, but they're too reflective. So, oh, let me get rid of my ugly mug here. They're too reflective, so that for the purposes of making the video, so I want to make it visible to you. Yeah, back and forth. This last row was all purple. The next row will be all green. That's because of that staggering effect. Also, just to reiterate the number of rows, we just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. We only went back, let's see, we did one, two, and then three. But the first row that you make, the first time after you get those two anchor beads on there and you complete this row of these beads, that's the first row you actually stitch through, but in practice in real terms it's row 1, 2, and it's the third row. So you do the first three rows just kind of the first two rows by default, and then the third row is the one that starts out with the stitching through the beads. It's a crazy thing. What can I say? Yeah. So yeah, now I'm back to green. And yeah, I'm so tempted. I won't mention her name, but there is this one uh lady I used to know who she was not the most diplomatic, although she meant well. But she told me I proudly showed her my first ever attempt at beadwork. And she goes, "Oh yeah, that's great. You know, isn't it funny how we always pick the worst colors for our first project?" And I'm like, "Oh no, Missy, I love purple and green. I still love purple and green 30 years later. So what can I say? I know she meant well. Or at least if she didn't, too bad, because I'm didn't stop me." Now, don't ever let anybody stop you. Now we're back to the purple, the other ugly color. What can I say? Uh, don't let anybody stop you. I'll be really honest with you. The first few people well, the first time I heard anybody say anything about beadwork was when I wore a beaded sweater to work. And it was a cool vintage sweater, and I got a lot of, I wore it a lot. I liked it. And she complimented me on this woman complimented me on the sweater, but then she she felt it necessary to point out that that wasn't really that hard to do. And I hadn't done the work on it myself. I bought it in the thrift store, right? So I wasn't really offended by that aspect of it. But I just wondered like why it was important to her to point out how that was something that was easy to do. It's like, okay, this is a person who is acting weird around beads, I guess. But I've met many bead people since who have a, a little bit more healthy attitude about beads, and whether something is hard or not to do is a little less important to them, I think. But yeah, I mean there are snobs in any genre, so the best thing to do is just like laugh or chuckle, or at least laugh internally or chuckle internally when somebody tries something like that on you, if it even affects you that much at all. I mean, what can I say? It wasn't until a couple of years later that I actually got into doing seed bead work myself. And again, I think I'll do, let's see. I know. Okay, I'm gonna mess with you now that I got my little anecdote off my chest. Um, I will reverse it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows. I'm going to switch the colors. So what you do is for just 2 rows, for just this row and the next row, whatever bead you're about to skip, you string the opposite color. And it'll look weird as you're doing it, but once you complete 2 rows, the stripe will reestablish itself. So yeah, for now, it's all, oh my God, what happened? It's all green. I thought we were doing stripes, but on the following row that will happen after the next stitch, I'm going to reverse that color as well. So I'm going from, on this row, I'm going from green to purple. So whatever I'm about to skip, I string the opposite color, and the stripe reverses itself. And what am I thinking? Now after this, we go back, the royal we, go back to whatever you string, or whatever you skip, you string. But just you have to, just for 2 rows, if you're using 2 colors, just for 2 rows, you have to do the opposite. And then by now, it will become more coherent in a second, but the stripes are now reversed. And watch me do this pinch and pull. I'm pinching the last stitch I did, and I'm pulling on the thread. And I'm instinctively doing that tuck and roll thing. I'll just call it a tuck and roll. I tuck it between my fingers and I roll it between my fingers. I tuck the beadwork between these fingers, and I roll it over my finger and tuck it between those two. That keeps the work tight. That makes it so it's not loosey-goosey. This is actually pretty tough. Every single bead, because I'm using doubled thread, has 4 threads going through it as well. So now on this row, starting now, I did 2 rows with the opposite color. Now I am back to following whatever I string, whatever I skip, I string. I'm back to whatever I skip, I string. And this will start to get a little more coherent after I do this row. Now, excuse me. Let's see here. Well, the other thing I meant to tell you when I was emphasizing that I normally use this white plate, or a blank plate made of glass or ceramic, I also keep my work elevated. Let me give you stop the screen sharing and show you how elevated my table is. See, my elbows are pretty much up here. I'm not doing this. If you do this, you're going to kill your neck. You're going to hurt your upper back. This is not about punishment. This is about fun and doing creative things. So please elevate your work. If um, I have my table that I'm working on risers, bed risers. That's one way to do it. There's also, you can literally put a big giant dictionary, the big giant Webster's dictionary or whatever, under your plate, and all of a sudden you've got, if it's this high, if it's a book this thick, it's going to be that much higher. Anything to make it so that you're not hunching over, because hunching over is not your friend. You will find out the hard way that just how much your head weighs. And when your head is constantly bowing forward, it won't be tech neck, it'll be beater's neck, right? So in any case, save yourself a trip to the doctor. So yeah, there had to be a crossover point. I could have crossed over colors when I was at the purple row instead of the green, but that's what we're working with here. It would have done that either way. There would have been a transition row either way. In other words, a row of basically 2 rows of purples in a row. So either way works. Now I will soon start a triangle shape, because this is one of those things where it's might be, if you try to overthink it, it might sound hard, but it's actually not, especially when you're doing single count. So I like to encourage people to do things improvisationally, I will do one more row in the purple in the stripes, and then I'll just do then I'll do maybe 3 rows of all purple, and then I'll start a green triangle. Um, I want to encourage people to do improvisational patterning just because that way you're spending more time beading and less time on the computer looking for patterns. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I want you also to, I want also for you to have faith in your own ability as a creator. So even if you don't think you're the Picasso of beadwork yet, you can just, you can find out whether, you can find out and hopefully find out in a positive way that your abilities are greater than you thought. For example, whew, let's see, I'm doing that pinch and pull thing again. For example, one thing that I noticed when I work on my own pieces is that sometimes I'll try something, it doesn't seem to work, and it really doesn't seem to work, and then I really think it sucks, and then I just go, oh God, what was I doing? Or or I have done that in the past. And then I thought, well, I don't know, I don't want to waste what I've already done. Let me just, I think I'll just let myself continue with this piece. And if it really sucks, halfway through the piece, then I'll do something different with it. But if it doesn't, then good. Well, what happens when I do that more often than not, is that it doesn't suck. And all I had to do was keep working on it for I don't know how many more rows, and then it started to look like something. So when you're at that awkward, oh my God, tween stage, then don't give up, because you might find that what you're doing actually doesn't suck. So speaking of things not sucking, I'm going to start a triangle, and it's going to take a while. So I'm going to only do half of the triangle because I know you're a busy person and you don't need to spend 6 hours a day watching YouTube videos, or maybe you do, I don't know. But I will get this, I'm going to just start doing a slope. Next row will be 2 beads, the following row 3, and so on till I get an angle, a diagonal of green against this field of wonderful contrasting purple, because purple and green look so great together. Yeah. Hmm. And I purposely made my thread a little bit, well, I used a thread format, I'll say, that gives me not a huge amount of thread, so I can show you the finishing off your old thread and starting your new thread routine. So check this out. Because I want a slope, I'm going to put a green bead in this spot. Green bead going into it. And a note about the thread. Remember, if you watched the previous video, beginning video, I boldly asserted that thread is a design element. I will boldly assert that again. It looks a lot different against the green than the purple, doesn't it? Well, that's what happens when you work with more than one color of seed beads. If I didn't like that, I would have to pick a different color of thread. In in general, when faced with a tough choice like that, I go for the darker option of thread. But what I'll do a lot, probably the colors I use the most are this kind of just a light tan color, and this dark, super dark, nice, super dark maroon, brown maroon. And I rarely use white, but I will use white depending on what beads I'm working with, the colors. And I will use black a lot. Again, either this deep, deep, dark reddish brown or a black is a very handy thing. But hey, this type of thread comes in all these different colors. So what can I say? That is a good thing. Um, the format that I spoke of is actually this. It's this long card, and it's actually 675 yards, and it's wound up inside this. What you do is you break off the end. Uh, this is a perforated end you break off, and these threads are actually wound around here, and you cut through the bottom. That gives you a specific and the length comes out the same each time, and the length is um oh, let's see, about, when it's doubled, I should say, and I almost always use it doubled, it's a little under 2 feet. So again, I don't use a huge long piece of thread because that can get tangled and so on. And I use a method of going from old thread to new thread that's easy, so I don't get hung up and have a mental block about, oh my God, I gotta switch my thread over, you know. So again, see, to continue the slope, what color do I put on? Green, because I'm progressing the green outward. I'm not going to put the green here because that's going to make a dot. But see how this triangle is starting, just a nascent triangle, a beginning the triangle is spreading. This is the triangle of fun. I mean, honestly, I could just make a tiny triangle, and I could start, you know, oh, well, I just thought of that. It's hard to describe verbally, so I'll probably should just keep my mouth shut about it and not confuse you. But your triangle, basically, all I'm saying is that your triangle can go halfway across, and then you can have the triangle recede again. The triangle can go all the way across. The triangle can only go this far, and then boom. So you have choices with triangles. The nice thing about single count peyote stitch is that it's design wise, keep this in mind, it's always going to provide a nice 45-degree angle slope if you want it, if you want that slope. And here it is growing further. Um, so I think I will finish my thread off. So see how I went right to the bead right underneath. See where I'm coming out here. I'm going right to the bead underneath, diagonally down to the bead below, not immediately below. If I went down to the bead immediately below, I'd have thread showing. That's not good. So I'm making a diagonal path. I think I will change direction. That way I've got even more thread going through here. And I think I can get away with finishing the thread right there. So I'll take a chance. I will clip it off and start my new thread because I already have another thread uh, needle threaded. So it's no hassle to just go, oh, grab a new needle. Boom. This is the big Herkin, roll it off the end of your finger knot, twist it, pinch it into a big whole Herkin knot, and oh boy, which end did I stop on? Well, it's always going to be the downbeat end. This is the up bead, this is down bead. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That's the end of the row. That's the downbeat. If I start my row, if I start beading from here, well, I'm not going to have any bead to go into on the end there. So I need to start, I like to start the new thread the third bead down. I'm going to restart beading a string of bead after I go through this bead. So this is my really restarting bead. So I back down 2 beads from that. I, just to be secure, I poke my thread in and back up. If I missed it, it'll just pass right through and I'll have to do it again. But if not, if I did it right, it turns into a knot. And if I also did it right, it doesn't show thread. And it doesn't. If you have thread over a bead, then that's not something you want. So you got to undo it and be judicious about where you poke that thread down. So again, it's easier to see here, but especially because it's, well, let's see. It's easier to see here because of the green versus the brown thread. So down through this bead, down through this on this side of the old thread, and up on this side of the old thread. Hello. Oh, here it is. Okay. Oh, hello. It backed right out of there. Bopped right out of there. Okay. I want it right here. Okay. And oh, with the loop, through. It's going through the loop. It's making a knot. And I've made 2 knots already. If I wanted to be really ultra secure, you can always do a half hitch knot around here too. I'll show you that just to show it to you. It can kind of make a little tiny bit of a bulge, but in the long run, that might not be, if it bugs you, don't do it that way. If it doesn't bug you, you can do it that way. So I'll show you how much of a lump it makes. Not much of one. Okay. Now, I'm going to cut this off, but before I do, I'm going to make 1 stitch, because if I do 6 rows and then I cut my knot and I find out that it doesn't stick, then I've got 6 rows coming off. This way I only have 1 stitch coming off. So cut that close as you can, close as I can, and boom, I'm ready to go. If I want to be on the safe side, yeah, I can just go, okay, is this sticking? Is my new stitch working? Can I pinch and pull, and will it pull out? Will it pull apart? Nope. Okay, good. Also, hey, why don't I get rid of this? I usually do it, cut it right against as close as I can to the work, but because of the proximity of the knot that I made, I want to cut it a little bit up. There's a little tiny bit showing there, and I'm going to just put the hot end, let's see, watch out. Just a little, see how that's shrinking up? It's shrinking up into a little ball, and I'll take the hot head of the match and just kiss it a little bit, and boom. That should be secure. And if not, I need to know now, not later. I think it'll do. If in doubt, what I can do is I can always, let's see if I would be able to pass through this bead. The knot might be blocking. It'll pass through. Okay, yeah, if I was really worried about it sticking or not, I could always start working from this end. I mean, there's nothing that says you can only work in this direction. You can start here with a fresh new needle or whatever and start working that direction if you want. It's a free country. What can I say? At least in theory. Okay, so back to the triangle. And now see if I put a purple bead in here, that would stop the progress of the triangle. Um, if I want the triangle to keep going at least halfway across the piece, then I need to put a green bead in, then the purple. Now, as the weather gets better, I might get to go outside and do beading. So I can show you the trees and the view from the deck and all this fun stuff. And if there are deer in the yard, I can show you the deer while I'm beading. But until then, beading is a good rainy day activity, but it's also a great sunny day activity because one thing that's nice about beading, and again, before I could continue flapping my jaw, got to put a green there. If I want that triangle to continue progressing that way. Um, people talk about eco-friendly this and green that. Well, beading, making the glass beads is not a hugely green occupation. However, once the beads are made and you want to get totally green, you can use vintage beads that have already, the damage has already been done hundreds of years, decades ago. You can, beading is so low tech, you just need a needle and thread in your hands and beads, and a surface to work on. Um, and maybe some beeswax and maybe some scissors or whatever. But it's not, you don't have a furnace, you're not using chemicals. Um, and this is what made me think of it. If it's a sunny day and you can go outside and bead, or if it's a sunny day and it's that light inside, you don't even need electricity. So that's my plug for that's my eco-friendly plug for beading as a hobby or a art form. Because some art forms are actually quite toxic, literally toxic, not figurative, not emotionally toxic, just physically, um, physically, physically funky, But so, and keep in mind, I have to keep the slope in mind. Again, if I accidentally put this color here, then that's the point of the triangle. Or the flat top of the pyramid or whatever. So if I want to keep that triangle going all the way across, I got to do green preemptively and that going that direction. And what I'll do, once I hit the other end of the row with this green, I will create a smaller triangle for you because that triangle does not have to go all the way across. I'm happy to say. And here I'm doing that pinch and pull thing. There we go. But yeah, speaking of eco-friendly, think of indigenous peoples, or colonizers, whatever, doing beadwork before the invention of electricity. Wow. Oh man, that is rad. And you see how I'm just reefing on it? I do that just about every stitch. It's just because I like tight work. What can I say? boing. See how that triangle's progressing? And then boing, not a green stitch. But soon, what can I say? Now I'm almost there. Pinch and pull. I have to do a preemptive green because if I did purple for this stitch, it would truncate. It would make the triangle only go that far, or at least the triangle would not be pointy. You'd have a sloping, and then you'd have a plateau. You'd have a tetrahedron, or a pyramid, or not a pyramid, but a ziggurat. And you can do ziggurat shapes if you want. Those are fun. See how I'm just keeping with the green on this end. And soon I will be all the way across. By the end of the next row, by the end of this row, see how this wants to pull out? That's why I'm doing the pinch and pull. Only takes a second at this. It works. And I'm massaging my thread as I go. That prevents it from twisting, because it will twist if you let it. It will twist in a heartbeat. So check this out. Almost there. Boing. Then preemptive green. Boing. We reached. The royal we have reached the end of the row. So boom. Now that's actually not a triangle. Well, it's a triangle shape. It's a diagonal shape. If I want to continue, if I want to make a nice big triangle, I could do a row of purple here after this to have a half triangle, or triangle, this kind of triangle. I could also think what I would do instead is make a big Herkin triangle, and I'll show you how to do that. The base of the triangle is going to get wider. The triangle is going to come to a point at that end. So it only takes one stitch to get that triangle point on its way. So if I want that to be the point of the triangle, I switch colors. Boing. There we go. But if I want it to be, a nice big triangle, I need to keep the green going and only gradually introduce the purple the way I gradually introduce the green there. So I think I will finish this triangle, and oh boy, because I don't want this to be a cajillion-hour video, because I know your time is valuable too. And I mainly wanted to show you that you can do patterns. I didn't use a pattern, PDF pattern for this. I didn't use a computer to pixel it out for me. I just went, whoa, what if I do this? Okay, boom. Gee, I'm bored. I think I'll do this instead. What's that look like? Oh, cool. Try boredom is your friend. Find out the hard way. Finding out the hard way is better than being fed information all the time. I don't want to sound too snotty about it, but I can tell you right now that if you find things out the hard way, they will benefit you in the long run, and you'll be a more adventuresome beater. You'll have more confidence in your beating, even if it doesn't feel like confidence at first. And you might come up with something that you didn't think possible. So yeah, see how I preemptively brought in that purple because the green is receding from this spot, from this part. So yeah, I think I will. Well, let me do one row because I can conceive of it how it's going, but it might be harder for you if you haven't done this before. So see how I have to put in another purple. Oh, wait a second. Yes, if I put in a green, then well, I'll show you what happens when I put in a green. It's good to show you things that disrupt the pattern because you might, number one, you might decide that you want that instead. Number two, you can actually see how, oops, that's not a gentle slope anymore. It's a jagged edge. So if you want a jagged edge, that's how to do it. Yay. And again, I have to do this incrementally. So the rest of this row will be green. But then on the following row, that's where the purple goes. So I think I will at least get to the halfway mark so it's easier to see. Because just because I can conceptualize it in my mind doesn't mean I communicated it accurately to you. But if you get it, good. If you don't, try it anyway. Find out what happens when you don't do it that way. And if you like it, that's a new way to do things. Pinch and pull. There we go. Tuck it in, tuck and roll, pinch and pull. What can I say? That's the way to keep good thread tension. Good thread tension helps make it a lot easier to figure out which beads are the up beads and which beads are the down beads, because when they're really loosey-goosey, it's hard to tell. Ah, okay, here's that purple one I'm talking about. Boom. And see how the slope of the slant of the purple is invading the green. Yay. Now, I teach on Zoom periodically a class I call Klimt meets Kente, and here's my purple going over the green to continue that slope. And then here's my next green to also continue the slope. And what it is it's done slightly differently. It's done in 3 count. This is one single count, but I do the Klimt meets Kente in 3 count. And it is basically an improvisational what if bracelet. And I will, let's see, do I have, oh, hang on just a sec. I have them nearby and I will bring them out for you and show you. They are things like this. These are all patterns that were done improvisationally. And now look at that. That's something else entirely, right angle weave. But these were done without patterns. In 3 count, not single count. But again, if you can do this, you can definitely do that. And it's something that enables you to really use different materials, different types of beads together with the seed beads. It enables you to create patterns out of nothing. It enables you to work with your any ADHD tendencies in the sense of um, going, okay, I did 3 stitches of this, now I'm bored. And that works to your advantage. Here's the slope again. So let me know in the comments if you're interested in a Klimt meets Kente class. I teach that on Zoom periodically. I will be setting up an Eventbrite page for you to make it easy for you to sign up. The class is 3 hours, and I usually do it for I think approximately $50. I actually provide kits if you want them, but I just say bring BYOB, bring your own beads. And what I encourage you to think of is the reason I call it Klimt meets Kente is because the range of styles you can get can evoke the wonderful, renowned Kente cloth of Ghana, depending on the colors you use. It can also evoke the wonderful paintings of Gustav Klimt, or anybody. I mean, your favorite, the colors associated with your favorite anime characters, whatever. So, continuing the slope, and so I encourage you to inquire about it if I haven't put a link to it in the description box. And I will have to remember to actually include links to my Etsy store and my website and Patreon and my Patreon page in the description box on the YouTube so you can access those easily. I forgot to do that for my previous one, so I will do that before I forget again. So yeah, I think I'll continue so that you see the entire triangle. Why, from this close, why screw around? And I will need to uh, uh, string another needle, and I will need to stop and start a new thread, but hey, then you get to see that again. What can I say? Sometimes it's necessary, even for, you know, people who are of decently high intelligence, to watch something several times before it really sinks in. And if you're one of those people, it's not because you're not intelligent, it's because the brain is just like telling you this isn't making sense, and then all of a sudden it's telling you it's making sense. So, oh, I think I might be able to get away with not oh, excuse me, I put on 2 beads. Oh, this is what happens when you put 2 beads on instead of one. You get a bulge. That is another class I teach about which I will speak later. But yes, putting beads where they don't belong. What can I say? That's my forte. Yes, this is actually the end of the triangle, the bottom point of the little pyramid, and voila. Mira, if I complete this row, now I complete this row, and this bead right here, that's going to be purple. The bead on top of that, that'll be purple. So I think I can get away with that. I hope that's coherent enough for you. And let me know in the comments if this is working for you, if you like this format, if it's making sense. If you have any questions about how to do it, where to take classes, and so on, or any suggestions in terms of uh, whether whether it was explicit enough and so on, and actually also include comments such as, hey, what about writing a weave? Hey, what about herringbone? I keep hearing about herringbone. That's how great it is. Well, it is great, so I can teach you that too. So again, I guess I will leave it at that. I will stop my screen share, and I hope to God I'm recording. Yes, I am. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I will join you on YouTube again, and I hope this inspires you. If you get started, um, you get started, don't stop. It's fun. All right, well, take it easy and I'll see you next time. Bye.